Hi, my name is Vanessa Nakate. I am a climate justice activist from Kampala in Uganda. I am also the author of A Bigger Picture.
Hello, Vanessa. Good afternoon. Many thanks for being with us here today and actually being the one to formally launch the Planeta in Transe interview series for the Folha de S.Paulo newspaper. I would like to start by asking you what happened since your image was cropped out of that photograph of climate activists at the World Economic Forum. And here I'm asking more specifically about the African voices being not only more respected, but actually their voices being amplified as part of the global climate debate.
We have been really working to demand for full representation of African voices in the climate movement, in the climate spaces and climate conversations. We believe that every activist has a story to tell, and every story has a solution to give, and every solution has a life to change. And we also know how the entire continent of Africa is responsible for less than 4% of global emissions historically. So it is important to have the activists, the people, the communities on the front lines of the climate crisis. It's important to have these people on the front pages of the world's newspapers.
Vanessa, African countries have been seriously impacted by the climate crisis. What is currently the main focus of the climate debate in the continent and also in your own country?
Many communities on the continent are experiencing some of the worst impacts of the climate crisis. We have seen the unfolding of different climate disasters, from flooding to cyclones. For example, Cyclone Idai, which ripped large parts of the African continent, leaving so many people displaced, leaving so many people dead, and a lot of property destroyed. We have seen the Eastern Africa drought that has left more than 26 million people looking for food to eat, that have left many animals starving and leading to their death. As the climate crisis escalates, there are certain things that we cannot adapt to anymore. Communities cannot adapt to starvation. Communities cannot adapt to the loss of their identities, to the loss of their cultures, to the loss of their histories because of the rising climate disasters. So some of the key issues to address as we go to COP27 is the fact that loss and damage is here with us now, and it is necessary for the developed countries to provide climate finance for loss and damage. We are still waiting for the $100 billion that was promised, to be delivered for the vulnerable countries, but it hasn't yet been delivered.
What are your main priorities in terms of the loss and damage agenda, considering the outcomes of COP26?
We know who caused the climate crisis, and we know who needs to pay for the climate crisis, but they don't want to pay for the climate crisis. We know the history of the rising global emissions that have been caused by developed countries, by countries in the global north. It is a responsibility for these countries to pay for loss and damage, to pay, for the issues and for the suffering that so many communities are going through because of the climate crisis. For example, I could use the easiest example. You've grown up in this home and, this is your home, this is your village, this is your community. But when your community or when your home or when your village is submerged because of extreme flooding, that is not something that you get back. You'll have to move to another place. You will lose the memories of that place. You will lose the histories of that place. That's why it's really important that, as we go towards COP27, we really highlight and amplify the issue of loss and damage. And personally, it is going to be one of the things that I'm going to put so much focus on, to demand for climate finance, to demand for a separate fund for loss and damage.
How representative is Uganda in the global climate debate?
We have a number of activists from Uganda that are really working and helping organize and helping mobilize when it comes to the climate movement. Most of the activists that I work with the Rise Up movement, with Fridays for Future Uganda, we are working so hard to demand for climate justice. This is not something that we can do by ourselves. Even our government, even African governments, they really have a role to play in working, in working to ensure that the future generation has a secure planet. Well, I haven't had, any specific engagement with my government, but I know that there are different things that are being done within the country, in terms of wetland restoration or forest cover restoration. We've seen some of these things that are, being done, but I also can't, forget about an oil pipeline that is going to be constructed from Uganda to Tanzania. So these are some of the, the challenges that we see when it comes to our governments, because to so many people, this is a project that is going to bring money or profit or economic development. But when you look at the environmental bit of it, the impact on the environment, we see how much the biodiversity, how many ecosystems are going to be destroyed because of this project.
Vanessa, I'm assuming that your life has changed a lot since you became a climate activist. Could you tell us a little bit about your routine and also about the work of the Rise Up movement?
As a Rise Up movement, we do a number of things, from helping to organize and mobilize climate strikes, so that we demand for climate justice. We also have community projects that we run. We also have the solar project, the Vash Green Schools project. And with this project, we install solar panels and eco-friendly cookstoves in schools to help drive a transition to renewable energy, and also to provide eco-friendly cookstoves that will reduce on the firewood that schools use in preparation of food. And we've also worked on projects of giving out solar lamps to individuals, solar lamps to families. So basically, that is some of the the work that we are doing, and also really using the Rise Up platform on social media and the blog that we have of 1 million activist stories, to really share different stories of different activists through their blogs or through their articles.
And how have you been including gender inequality as part of your activism?
In our societies, in our communities, especially in the rural areas, whereby so many women, so many girls, they have the responsibility of providing and getting resources for their families, that is food or collection of water or collection of firewood. When water sources are dried up, women have to walk long distances to collect water for their families. We have seen and read articles talking about climate brides, whereby many girls face a risk and challenge of dropping out of school and being forced into early marriages because their parents have lost everything, because of these climate disasters. That's why people need to know that the climate crisis really exacerbates the already existing, gender inequalities in our societies. And it's really important for us, as we demand for climate justice, that we also demand for gender equality, because there won't be climate justice without gender equality.
Vanessa, I would like to ask, what are your main priorities for this year and what happens until the next climate summit?
Some of my main priorities this year is, the putting an end to the fossil fuel industry, because again, this is what is, exacerbating the climate disasters that we are seeing, because we cannot eat coal, we cannot drink oil, and we cannot breathe so-called, natural gas. And my other, priority is the issue of educating girls and women empowerment. Project Drawdown lists 100 things that we can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and ranked number 5 as the most impactful solution is educating girls and family planning. So this year, I'm looking forward to doing so much work around educating us and creating as much awareness as possible around educating girls as a climate solution. Because in the end, when girls are educated, it doesn't just benefit the individual, it benefits the community and the world at large.
Vanessa, you have said that some issues receive more attention from the global north, such as the Amazon deforestation, while others, equally important, such as the destruction of the Congo Basin, do not. What are the climate change topics that should receive more attention?
I think that every climate issue in the communities or in the countries that are on the front lines of the climate crisis really need to receive coverage. Not just the Amazon rainforest, not just Congo rainforest, but every other ecosystem, every other, climate issue. So while the African continent is on the front line of the climate crisis, it is not on the front pages of the world's newspapers. So I think that, coverage is really needed in the places that are suffering some of the most brutal impacts of the climate crisis.
I would like to finish by asking you if you had any interaction with the activists of Fridays for Future in Brazil, and if you have any plans of visiting our country. Thank you.
I would love, I would love to, to visit the country, and I do have, friends from Fridays for Future Brazil that I have worked with, and yeah, it would be great to come to Brazil.